This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business, coming to you live from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. I am Peninah Karibe, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to the show. As always, let's begin with a look at the market. Pharmaceutical manufacturer Aspen and gold miner Anglo Gold Ashanti led the JSE higher today, with the local bulls getting a boost from positive economic data, while investor focus now shifts to the US elections on Tuesday. Shares in Aspen Pharmacare rose the most since April 2000, up 11.45% after the group said it had reached a preliminary agreement to produce US drug maker Johnson & Johnson's candidate COVID-19 vaccine at its facility in Port Elizabeth. The JSE all share gained 1.71%. Coming up in the show tonight. Pre-orders for the COVID-19 vaccine by rich countries lock out lower-income countries. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange records more delisting as companies worry about the health of South Africa's economy. And how the coronavirus pandemic is affecting fashion habits of many people in Tunisia. Our starting point tonight is on COVID-19 vaccines. High-income and a few middle-income countries have already reserved an estimated 8.8 billion doses even before any vaccine candidates are in the market. 3.8 billion doses have been paid for, with the other 5 billion doses currently under negotiation or reserved as optional expansions of existing deals. Canada, for instance, has purchased enough to vaccinate its population 5 times over. Since none of these candidates are approved, some of the purchased vaccine candidates may prove to be unsuccessful. Countries that can afford to are purchasing a portfolio of vaccines in hopes that one or more will get through the regulatory process. Now, Andrew Taylor is one of the authors of this report that we've just talked about, and she joins us live now from London via Skype. So, Andrea, this report paints a very bleak picture for low-income countries in regards to accessing these COVID-19 vaccines. Now, we do know that the World Health Organization issued a fair allocation framework that recommends that doses are first made available fairly and equally to all countries until they're able to protect 3% of their population. So the question is, why is this framework not being followed, and is there a mechanism of enforcing it?
Right. So the COVAX facility is really the only mechanism that we have right now to ensure fair allocation for the first tranche of doses. And many high-income countries have invested generously already in COVAX, which is really important to note. Unfortunately, what our research is making clear is that the direct deals that these countries are negotiating may also at the same time be undermining their investment in equity by reducing the number of doses that will be available in the first year or two.
All right, so this report also, Andrea, says that these inequalities could delay access to COVID-19 protection across large regions, including here in sub-Saharan Africa, until almost the middle of the decade. That's what the report says. So how will this impact the desperate struggle that is on right now to contain this pandemic?
Right. Well, it's really important that we do ensure that all countries can access the vaccine to cover the high priority populations, such as frontline healthcare workers and the elderly, as early and as quickly as possible. Without this, we cannot contain the virus, and existing inequalities will deepen. But our research really underscores the importance of unlocking manufacturing capacity, particularly in Latin America and Africa. And doing this can help alleviate the impact then on low-income countries of the direct deals that have already been made by high-income countries, and it can increase the amount of vaccine that's available in the first year.
So there are also distribution challenges highlighted in this report, such as the need for extreme cold storage, which a lot of low-income countries do not have. Is it all gloom and doom? Can these challenges be overcome, and how?
Right. So the distribution challenges will be significant, and particularly in countries that have large rural or remote populations and countries with poor immunization infrastructure. But there is a lot of good news on this front as well. So we've spoken to a number of countries that are preparing proactively, that are partnering with private sector to ensure cold chain transport and storage. And we're also seeing that UNICEF and the COVAX partners are investing now to ensure that supplies like syringes are in place. So there's quite a lot of movement on this front that is really encouraging. It's really important to remember, though, that not all vaccines will have the same requirements. And this highlights another reason why the COVAX facility is so important, because it can ensure that best fit vaccines are allocated to the right countries. So, for example, if one of the successful vaccines is a one-dose vaccine with refrigeration requirements, that will be a lot easier to distribute in low-income countries and rural and remote areas, whereas a high-income country could administer a two-dose vaccine that needs freezer storage. And COVAX can serve essentially as an air traffic controller to reduce wastage and ensure that the right vaccines get to the right countries.
All right, and we have seen, Andrea, initiatives by the African Union seeking to raise up to $5 billion through the Afrexim Bank towards the vaccine. Can such initiatives forestall what would be a crisis for sub-Saharan Africa countries?
Yeah, so these initiatives are really exciting, and they could really change the situation for low-income countries, as you say. So the partnership you mentioned in particular between the African Union and the Africa CDC is really focused on pooling, procurement, and financing across African countries, which could really strengthen their leverage and their global position in the market. We're seeing really similar initiatives now developing in Latin America as well. So that's all very encouraging news.
All right, Andrea, thank you very much for that. Andrea Taylor live for us there in London. And still on vaccine marches, South African pharmaceutical company Aspen Pharmacare has reached a preliminary agreement with Johnson & Johnson to commercially manufacture its COVID-19 vaccine candidate. The drug company adds that it has agreed to provide the capacity required to manufacture vaccines at its Port Elizabeth facility. The Johnson & Johnson's vaccine candidate is still in clinical trials. The deal will see Aspen perform formulation, filling, and secondary packaging of the vaccine for the U.S. firm. Aspen has invested more than $184 million in the Port Elizabeth facility. The announcement saw Aspen's shares surge more than 4% on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange on that announcement. Now, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, meantime, is seeing more and more companies delisting. It lost 14 listings in the first half of 2020, while last year 24 companies delisted. According to a report by Market Information Service Timbuk One, there are currently less than 350 listed companies on the JSE. That is down more than 40% from the 601 listed companies back in 2001. Angela Kupla has more details.
There are a number of drivers hurting listings on the JSE. The concerns about the South African economy seem to be top of mind. Then there's the relative ease of raising capital generally.
Over the last decade, it's just become so much easier to get money offshore. 10 years ago you could do it. Now today you could do it with an app and a click.
The JSE has had a monopoly on listings in South Africa for decades. It's talking to prospective clients in an attempt to win small and mid-cap listings. It's also looking for solutions for its existing clients.
How do we help smaller companies stay liquid on the exchange, attract capital? And part of that is around getting enough research on the smaller stocks, because a lot of the research is going towards your big top 40, even some in the top 100 are struggling to get enough coverage.
Ultimately, it's about raising capital, and while the JSE has had a head start, companies still need to raise capital.
I think there's a definitive need for clients in terms of creative ways to raise capital, new ways of thinking about problems, bringing digital enablement to the underlying processes. How do we look at governance and make governance better, more efficient in the real world economy? That's how we focus on the problem, and that's where we're looking to grow. We've managed to carve ourselves a niche. For ourselves, this year's been a good year. We've seen 4 new listings on the exchange.
Things will get a little tougher for the JSE now, and business will get more competitive in 2021, as there are some significant changes to regulations looming.
Next year what we're going to get is best execution. which means it is law of the land that your broker gets you the best price. And if you've got a company on 2 exchanges and one of them has a cheaper cost structure, that's going to significantly hurt the JSE further. And we've seen Brazil, we've seen Australia, when the new upstarts come along and you get best execution, that's a huge boon for them. And that's not so much on the listing side, but it's certainly on the amount of value transacting every day.
Most pundits will tell you that the JSE doesn't reflect what happens in the economy in South Africa. In this instance, though, it seems like it is mirroring its impacts. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
All right, in some corporate headlines, Jumia has announced that its logistics service is now available for use by third parties. These were previously reserved for e-commerce and food vendors operating on its marketplace. Third parties can also leverage on Jumia's partnerships with players such as Total, Vivo Energy and Posta Kenya to enable wider presence across the 11 countries on the continent where Jumia operates. Food producer Tiger Brand says expectations for full-year revenue and profit have improved since August, boosted by better-than-expected operating conditions and sustained demand for its products. In an updated trading statement on Monday, the company said it expects headline earnings per share from total operations to decline by 30% from the 13.22 rand it reported previously. In August, the group had warned of an up to 40% fall for this measure of profitability. A comeback by Kenyan betting firm SportPesa was prohibited barely 24 hours after the company announced a return. The company had made a return under a new parent company, Milestone Games, after a 16-month absence. However, Kenya's Betting Control and Licensing Board declared the move illegal. And European airline Ryanair has posted a loss for its key summer period for the first time in 30 years. This as COVID-19 restrictions suppress demand. The airline has warned it may only carry half its normal passenger numbers next year. Ryanair did not give a profit guidance for the full year, but the chief executive, Michael O'Leary, said it was likely to post a deeper loss in the second half of the year. This would make it the airline's first annual loss since 2009. This is Global Business coming up. Egypt seeks new markets for its textiles in Kenya and Tanzania. And South African Airways just misses liquidation.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Winelands region of South Africa, Wellington is the only town apart from Cape Town where minstrel troops celebrate New Year, a culture that's been around since the days of slavery. The carnival brings joy and a sense of belonging to the many communities where alcohol and drug abuse are rife and half the youth is unemployed.
Music is a sweet thing. Music brings people together. Music will stop violence.
Concerned community members believe that by encouraging the youth to join in this vibrant tradition, they will follow an alternative path to a more positive future.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Peninah. Hello, Naro.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Egypt's textile industry is looking to push into the Kenyan and Tanzanian markets in November as part of a wider expansion plan across Africa. Cairo is making use of the free trade incentives provided by the COMESA agreement to enter these markets before expanding to the rest of the continent. CGTN's Yasser Hakim brings us the rest of the details.
The process has been put in motion as textile and garment producers in Egypt are pushing to raise their market in Africa. Kenya and Tanzania are the first destinations for the industry. That is Egypt's second biggest industrial sector after agro-industry, and which accounts for 3.5% of its gross domestic product.
The two countries have a fine clothes manufacturing industry and there is demand for textiles. When I was chairman of the Egypt Export Federation, we established Destination Africa Forum, which helped us understand more about the African market. Africa is an important market. We are not only exporting ready-made clothes and textiles, but I think what is more important is technical cooperation to develop the industry in the continent.
The plan entails establishing multiple showrooms in Kenya and Tanzania to showcase and sell Egyptian textile and ready-made garments. There are already Egyptian warehouses to stock the products in the two East African nations. According to the Cairo-based federation, Egypt exported textile and garments worth $2 billion in 2019. 80% of this was to the United States and the European Union. The rest were for Arab countries and small amounts to Africa. But there are challenges for exporters in the North African state to attack the African market aggressively.
The main challenge is to study the African markets and the purchasing habits in the countries we target. It needs time and a lot of effort to study and analyze because information is not easy to gather here. The state is helping by enhancing feasibility studies and opening contacts with officials to aid exporters in their mission.
Another challenge is the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has disrupted supply chains and affected consumer purchasing power. Egypt's textile exports have dropped by 20% between January and September this year, with predictions of a continued drop going into 2021. This could prolong the attempts to expand the Egyptian textile industry into the continent. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
South African Airways has managed to avoid liquidation with a $656 million injection from the government. Last week, the Treasury announced that they will ensure essential parts of its business rescue process are financed. The ailing state airline has been in business rescue since the end of 2019. Sumitra Naidu has more.
For years, SAA has been mismanaged and plagued by political interference. This is why many were not surprised when the finance minister announced another loan to save the airline. The $656 million will be used for severance packages and to service some of the airline's debt.
This restructured airline will only have approximately 1,300 employees. 3,200 workers at SAA will either have to take voluntary severance packages or be retrenched. So an extremely high price has been paid for this. And to make matters worse, for the last 5 months or more, our members have not been earning any salary.
Praveen Gordon, the Minister of Public Enterprises, has expressed confidence that a new airline under a potential strategic private partnership will emerge by June next year.
Privatization has never been on the cards for the government or for the unions, but it does seem like it is the only alternative now to ensure that SAA keeps flying.
This, for us, it's not the ideal situation, given that the alternative would have been an airline which has either been wound down or liquidated, and there all workers would lose everything in that type of scenario.
Aviation expert Desmond Latham says it won't be easy to convince private equity into a deal given the legacy of political interference in SAA.
When they went into business rescue in December, SAA had 48 aeroplanes. They now have 7. There's a lot of blurred and grey areas here. I mean, the recovery period initially will be paying debt, paying retrenchments, that money that's been earmarked, and there will be some of the cash made available to try and resurrect the airline by probably mid of 2021.
Latham also warns against the timing and the turbulence this industry is going through.
COVID is having a major impact on global aviation. In Africa, it's down 90% in some places, and the overall expectation is only 30% recovery by early in the new year. Ethiopian Airlines is government-owned, for example, and makes a profit because it's not government-managed. And there's a big difference here in South Africa. The management team at SAA were politically instituted, if you like. The board of directors was massively interfered with by the ruling party, and the result is that it collapsed.
Adam Voss, the CEO for SAA Technical, resigned at the weekend, not ideal as the airline attempts to get back in the air. While some are hopeful, many experts believe SAA should be left on the ground. Samisha Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, South African power utility Eskom has reported a net loss of $1.3 billion for the last financial year, and that's despite a government cash injection. Revenue generated was $12.5 billion, but sales were down 1.3% compared to 2019. Growth was hampered by capacity shortages and adverse economic conditions. Angela Kupla delves into the data for us.
The utility says it's worked on cost-cutting measures and managed to save a little over $1 billion, but that will be offset against the $468 million that was spent on diesel to minimize the effect of load shedding.
We were able to achieve an operating profit of $9.2 billion in a challenging environment. However, as everybody in South Africa is aware by now, we carry an unsustainable debt burden, gross debt of some $484 billion at year end, and that leads us to incur net finance cost of some 31.3 billion rand. And when you add that to the operating profit, that leads you then to a net loss of 20.5 billion.
Lower consumer demand due to a constrained economy didn't help the utility either.
The net operating profit is not able to even cover half of their debt service commitments. So the debt service cover ratio at the moment is about 52%. So that basically means they can only cover half of their debt service commitments through their net operating profit.
The Chief Financial Officer made an astonishing admission during the briefing session.
Eskom cannot survive without the government's support. We are not a going concern. It comes out clearly in our director's report. We need to deal with that debt. 483 billion rand, that's generating around 40 billion interest costs, is not sustainable. In terms of our analysis, we believe a more sustainable debt balance of borrowing should be around 200 billion.
Analysts weren't surprised by the comment. It's been an open secret for investors and funders for some time now.
Even after 18, 19 months, when this has been on the table, when the President gave his State of the Nation address in February 2019, they still have not got a clear picture of the way forward in respect of debt and how to make Eskom into a going concern.
Eskom management are trying all manner of solutions to try and get the utility back on track, increasing tariffs, increasing efficiencies, and bringing those headcounts down. Let's see if it works. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Tunisian Employers Federation says tens of thousands of Tunisians have lost their jobs due to the current economic crisis worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. Experts have warned of more job losses in 2021 if the health crisis persists. CGTN's Adnet Shawashi has more details.
The Tunisian Confederation of Industry and Handicrafts says sustaining small and medium-sized enterprises has been challenging due to the negative impact of the pandemic.
SMEs are in crisis. They are facing real difficulties, and the worst is yet to come during the second wave of the pandemic. We are scared about the impact of the current health crisis on the whole economic and industrial fabric. The banking and service sectors as well as investments are also affected because both demand and production are declining.
According to the latest Central Bank of Tunisia statistics, tourism revenues dropped by 61% by the end of October 2020. Experts have warned that the unemployment rate will rise to a record high 21% in the next few months.
The crisis resulted in the loss of 165,000 jobs. This number will rise to 200,000 or more. The current unemployment rate is about 19 to 20%. There will be no job creation in the near future, especially in the tourism sector, which is devastated. Even the most successful businesses in Tunisia were forced to lay off staff and to reduce the number of working hours.
The National Institute of Statistics estimates the number of unemployed people stands at about 850,000. That figure includes over 250,000 university graduates. Radia Warhezi, who holds a degree in economics, has been unable to find a job. She is desperate because her life has been adversely affected by the COVID-19 crisis.
The coronavirus crisis is causing me to lose hope, and I'm not the only one. I cannot find a job even in the private sector. I know dozens of friends who've lost their jobs since last March. Sending applications and knocking on doors has not helped. The situation is catastrophic.
A recent survey conducted by the Arab Institute of Business Managers and the Agency for the Promotion of Industry and Innovation revealed that 65% of companies expect a decline in turnover in the next 6 months. Consequently, at least 100,000 people could lose their jobs during the same period.
The World Bank has revealed in its economic monitoring report that poverty and vulnerability are expected to increase in Tunisia. The Tunisian Confederation of Industry and Handicrafts has urged the government to support the businesses and individuals who have been affected by the first and the second wave of the pandemic. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Global Business. We're taking a short break. Coming up, China unveils its 14th five-year plan for the country's economic and social development. And Bangkok tests its first fleet of electric ferries.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces towards the protesters.
worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
In other news making headlines, U.S. President Donald Trump and challenger Joe Biden are making final pitches to voters as the November 3rd election day looms. Both will focus their efforts on key states before ending a campaign season that has been largely reshaped by the coronavirus pandemic. The exercise has attracted overwhelming international attention, and Africa is no exception. A proposal to change Algeria's constitution has won the support of voters, and officials say it will pass into law despite the lowest voter turnout in the country's history. The Electoral Commission says less than 24% of eligible voters took part in Sunday's referendum, and only two-thirds supported the proposed changes. Authorities in Ethiopia have warned that people who fail to wear masks in public could face up to 2 years in jail. This is for violating restrictions aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19. The government says that citizens are becoming lax in observing restrictions after state of emergency was lifted. And October was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. This year, Egypt aimed to set a new Guinness World Record for the largest breast cancer campaign in the world. The country reached more than 500,000 women with its Heroine Story campaign. And that's a look at some of the other big stories of the day. Over to China now, and the government says its 5-year plan is vital for the country's economic and social development. Earlier on Monday, high-level officials provided details on how they are going to carry out the vision. Li Jingye has more.
The newly released blueprints outlined key goals in major sectors. The government's vision for 2035 sets a deadline to achieve what it calls socialist modernization. It foresees a vibrant economy, robust technological capacity, and comprehensive national strength. In the next 5 years, the focus will be on the real economy, fostering healthy and high-quality economic growth. China will set up a new growth pattern with the domestic market as the mainstay and the domestic and international markets reinforcing each other.
The new pattern means emphasis on the domestic and international circulations rather than a closed internal loop.
Innovation will remain the key growth driver. Self-reliant technology is to support development.
We will improve our ability to make innovations independently and do our own things well because we cannot ask for or buy the core technologies from elsewhere. But at the same time, we hope to learn from advanced international experience and will share more Chinese technological outcomes with the world.
Rural areas will be given special attention. Agricultural modernization and food security will be the focus. As for the environment, The country will further promote sustainable development to achieve a balance in economic growth and ecological stability. China will work to ensure both development and national security. The country will enhance the national security system and capability to ensure economic security and the safety of people's life, and to maintain social stability and security. China will also make major strides in the modernization of national defense and the armed forces. The blueprint says China is committed to maintaining lasting prosperity and stability in Hong Kong and Macau, as well as advancing the peaceful development of cross-strait relations and national reunification. Experts say the blueprint outlines a comprehensive picture of the country's future.
That China is going all out to build a country on a modernized, harmonious and prosperous development path, and to improve people's livelihood and fulfill international responsibilities as a great nation.
Europe's largest economy, Germany, has seen a surge in coronavirus cases that has forced the government to order partial lockdowns. The decision has not been easy and is frustrating for businesses already invested in safety measures. Trent Murray explains.
A day after announcing Germany was going back under partial lockdown, Chancellor Angela Merkel arrived in Parliament to explain her plan. It wasn't an easy audience, with opposition MPs shouting at her across the chamber.
I understand the frustration and the desperation in these areas affected by the lockdown. The affected businesses invested in so many hygiene safety measures and are now asking themselves if it was all for nothing. I reply, no, it wasn't. These hygiene safety measures will be needed again afterwards, but during this current exponential rise in infections, they are not enough. At the moment, we cannot trace the origin of 75% of the infections, and we need to get out of this situation as quickly as possible.
From Monday, a so-called circuit breaker lockdown will start, lasting for at least a month. Bars and restaurants will close except for takeaway service. Gyms, cinemas and theatres will shut, and holidays will effectively be banned, with hotels instructed to refuse bookings from holidaymakers. Health authorities say it's a strong and necessary step to help fight Germany's alarming spike in new coronavirus cases.
This dynamic rate of current infections will overload our intensive care units in just a few weeks from now. All of this shows us that at the beginning of the cold season, we are in a dramatic situation. It affects all of us, without exception.
But a number of small businesses are disappointed, particularly those in the hospitality sector. They say they're doing all they can to help reduce the risk of transmission.
I'm angry and I'm frustrated. I mean, we've taken a lot of measures. We have separation screens. We've built the terrace up with extra heaters so that people can sit outside. Well, it's killing the business. I mean, we're already down 60% of what we should be turning over or would be turning over without the corona.
While authorities aim to ensure the country's healthcare system can sustain itself through the winter, experts warn of a chilling effect on Germany's economic recovery. New data out today shows German unemployment figures fell more in October than first expected, with the Labour Ministry saying job retention schemes and stimulus are helping lead to a faster recovery. But that optimism comes with a very big but, with economists warning a second lockdown will hit the labour market, and in doing so, slow the revival of Europe's biggest economy. The Chancellor says the economy remains a priority, but it will cost billions of euros to help ease the effect of the restrictions. For now, saving lives takes precedent as the pandemic makes a second deadly sweep across Europe. Trent Murray, CGTN, Frankfurt.
The COVID-19 pandemic saw record job losses across the world this year, but there is still one industry that appears to be nearly recession-proof: technology. As Mark New reports, many feel coding is the new skill needed to solve the job market woes.
As restaurant stores and large swaths of the economy battle through the ups and downs of the COVID-19 pandemic, one sector keeps clicking along: big tech. At the height of the pandemic, Facebook said it planned to hire 10,000 people in 2020, while companies like Apple and Amazon have thousands of job openings listed.
if you look at universities like Stanford and Harvard and those top schools, on average per year, they probably produce about 200-300 computer scientists per year, and that is just not enough. And as you can see, also based on data, majority of those classes are very much white, have a really high household income to support going through school. And so we believe that talent is evenly distributed, but opportunities are not.
Wong believes computer programming boot camps like his Coding Dojo should be part of what he calls a national upskilling program to help job seekers during the pandemic. Beijing-born Chen Ye-zhang has a degree in finance, but couldn't find opportunities in that field when she moved to Seattle. She paid $15,000 for a 3-month course at Coding Dojo. Weeks after finishing, she got hired by a tech company and now works as a software engineer at Amazon.
IT industry is not easy to be affected by the outside, so it's not like something like the restaurant. If people all feared about the COVID-19, so they won't go restaurants, so restaurant go bankrupt. People can stay in home and get into the internet and then shopping online. So if you have the coding skill, definitely you will feel confident in this panic.
Zhang says she also recommended learning coding to several friends who are looking for work too. She says she understands the fear of trying to learn something that sounds so challenging, but she herself barely knew anything about coding at all when she enrolled, and there are many others who knew far less.
Recently, we just had a student who was a truck driver. He drove all the way from Mississippi to our Seattle campus to learn, and now he's working on Microsoft. And we have trained somebody who's above her 50s, and now she is a software developer as well. So, I mean, what I would tell people is that, look, you have to be committed to this, and this is something you are willing to sacrifice and you are going to put in the time.
Wong estimates the salaries of the truck driver and 50-something woman increased by 50%. Coding Dojo has also run programs for refugees whose degrees from overseas weren't valued in the U.S. It operated off a firm belief that in the world of coding, where you're from has no bearing on what you can build. Mark New, CGTN, Sunnyvale, California.
It's not just cars that are switching to electric power. In Thailand's capital, Bangkok, the city's first fleet of electric ferries are being tested. The move comes as officials there are working to fix Bangkok's constant pollution problem. Martin Lowe with his story.
Its futuristic design is a sleek addition to Thailand's waterways. It can carry 200 passengers and it's powered by 2 electric motors. This is the prototype of a fleet of 27 all-electric ferries to be introduced at Bangkok's Chao Phraya River. Inside, the skipper steers with a joystick rather than a wheel. The boats are quiet and there's less vibration for passengers.
The waterways here are very busy, right? And it's very important that the next steps are for these to go electric, or at least electric hybrid.
The $33 million project is aimed at cutting pollution, promoting alternative energy and reducing road congestion by providing an alternative for cross-city transport.
The obvious benefits for the environment is zero pollution. That's the way the world's got to go.
The boats are manufactured by Energy Absolute, a Thai company. The electric motors come from Danfoss Editron in Finland.
The upfront cost is higher, but what's surprisingly is the operation and maintenance of an electric vessel is way lower.
Bangkok's waterways have long played a vital role in transporting commuters, but existing ferries are much less environmentally friendly. The operators say using electric ferries will remove around 9,500 tonnes of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere each year. In conjunction with electric cars, buses and trucks, it's anticipated they'll make a substantial contribution to cleaner air. Batteries can be recharged in just 30 minutes, providing up to 3 hours operation and a range approaching 100 kilometres. In future, these boats may also be used at sea, carrying holidaymakers between Thailand's tropical islands. Martin Lowe, CGTN, Bangkok.
Connectivity, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things. We hear about these concepts all the time, but how exactly are they changing our lives? CGTN's reporter Sui Huyao visits 2 production lines to learn more about the transformations underway.
Robotic arms getting the job done. This smart factory manufactures air conditioning technology for office buildings, skyscrapers, and airports. The famous bird's nest in Beijing and the tallest building in Shanghai, the Shanghai Tower, all use facilities produced by this company.
We've been in China for more than 20 years. Since 10 years ago, we began incorporating artificial intelligence in our production, specifically in assembling parts and inserting tubes. AI has doubled our output and reduced employees by 10%.
Apart from making manufacturing more productive with less waste, Zhang says safety is another benefit of using AI. Workers used to be exposed and risked hurting themselves. But now the problem is solved thanks to automation.
Previously, welding posed a serious harm to workers' eyes, but now it's done by welding machines that use laser positioning. In future, our goal is to have the majority of production line operating with digital technologies.
For the upcoming CIIE, Johnson Controls is providing 7 giant chillers like this one. These machines will ensure that the venue has a perfect temperature so that the visitors can avoid sweating heat as they explore and browse. Smart factory is applied not only by equipment makers, but also clothes makers. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba's Rhino platform is providing the solution for more customized quality clothes. This new clothing production line is now equipped with smart cameras, print heads, and other machines. Combined with data analytics and back-end technologies, top-quality customization is made possible.
Our hope is to continue to expand Rhino manufacturing, to create an inclusive, win-win, and open digital collaborative network, serving 100,000 businesses and forming a trillion-level digital intelligent manufacturing ecosystem.
Insiders say digital technologies are revolutionizing the industry. They teach the systems to work all by themselves. Even more impressive, they're able to learn from mistakes and constantly improve performance. The advances are expected to make a huge difference in our lives. Cui Huiyao, CGTN, Jiangsu Province.
All right, let's go through the commodities markets now, and oil prices fell today on worries that widening coronavirus lockdowns in Europe would weaken fuel demand and amid concerns about turbulence around this week's U.S. presidential election. Countries across Europe have reimposed lockdown measures to try to slow COVID-19 infection rates that have accelerated in the past month. Global oil trading companies expect further demand destruction, although estimates differ. A tighter race in the lead up to the U.S. election on Tuesday and electoral uncertainty also prompted investor caution in global markets. Still ahead on Global Business. The coronavirus pandemic forces a change in fashion habits for many people in Tunisia.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Aden, Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
South Sudan's government says it plans to increase its 2020-2021 budget by 29% to fund an expanded administration and a peace deal that aims to end 6 years of armed conflict. But the country still has no parliament to approve national expenditure, and the government is running on a supplementary budget. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
South Sudan still has no approved budget for 2020-2021. The proposals were supposed to be submitted to the National Assembly by May 15th.
What we have now is that the executive is the only mechanism which was established under the agreement. There's no legislation. Now, if one talk about a national budget requires a parliament to endorse. And that's why since up to today, the day of today, we don't have a national parliament in place that is really considered part of the spirit of the agreement or part of the provisional agreement. We couldn't have a board that endorsed a national budget.
South Sudan depends on oil revenue to fund 98% of its budget. The effects of COVID-19 and a fall in global oil prices means reduced revenue for South Sudan's government. Inflation is also rising and civil servant salaries have lost value, and for months their wages have not been paid. South Sudan's government says it is working on a budget that will improve the economy.
The new salary structure for civil servants should be resubmitted, to be revisited and expedited, as well as the Emolument Act 2011 should be reviewed so that this salary structure is brought in line with the market index.
The government says its spending is increasing. The country has 5 vice presidents, 35 ministers, 9 deputy ministers, and will have 550 members of parliament as dictated by the current peace deal. The government says it is working to acquire loans from financial institutions such as African Development Bank.
For the past few months, South Sudan has been running without an annual budget as the cabinet approves supplementary budgetary allocations to keep the country running. Traditionally, South Sudan's financial year runs from July 1st to June 30th.
Some civil societies in South Sudan say even if the government completes the budgetary process, more work would be required to improve the economy.
We need to get part of the oil revenue to be injected to agricultural sector because we are 100% importing country. Importing country will never have economical strength until you become productive.
South Sudan has proposed a $1.6 billion budget for 2020-2021, a 29% increase from last year's expenditure. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
For African countries experiencing increased population and rapid urbanization, waste management has become a constant thorn. One such country is Zimbabwe. Authorities in the capital are grappling with city waste management systems that need rehabilitation. CGTN's Joy Kiruki with the details of how a youth-led group is engaging communities in environmental conservation.
Harare, the capital city of Zimbabwe, struggling to manage its garbage and rehabilitate its waste system.
Due to population increase in urban areas, waste management has been a major problem to deal with. Waste contributes about 5% to our country's greenhouse gas emissions. We need to properly manage waste, change our throw-away mentality, and continuously raise awareness in companies, shops and schools and other institutions, public and private.
To help manage the growing concern, a group of young people formed the Zimbabwe Sunshine Group. This is a project that focuses on environmental sustainability and sustainable development. Their aim is to implement good waste management standards and lobby for environmental conservation. Apart from cleaner cities, the initiative is also creating opportunities for young people.
We are seeing a change in the uptake of young people in the waste management sector, and we're also seeing a change in the way that people view waste management. Waste management is actually considered a traditional woman's role in the home. But now we have more men than women coming to us to ask, how can I start separating my waste at home? How can I teach my family to do the waste separation in source? Because this is how we want to live, to make the environmental future brighter.
Their awareness campaign targets mainly households. Families are taught how to manage waste at the source in order to reap the benefits of proper waste management once mastered.
65 to 70% of waste that is generated is actually biodegradable waste, which is now the most problematic waste stream in Zimbabwe. So we do vermicomposting, where we then take the biodegradable waste and process it so that it becomes manure.
Proper waste management not only means cleaner communities, but can also improve food safety and food security. Joy Kirukijuma, CGTN.
Tunisia's National Statistics Institute has estimated that 5 million consumers, nearly half the population, buy clothes from a fruit market. These second-hand markets offer affordable and fashionable items. However, the sector is facing unprecedented challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Following a recent surge in COVID-19 infections and deaths, Tunisian authorities have banned open-air public markets. Tens of thousands of businesses have been affected by the new measures. This is one of the few open fruit markets selling second-hand clothes in Tunisia.
The state has caused the bankruptcy of thousands of fruit businesses. According to the latest health protocol measures, our presence here as fruit vendors is illegal. Are we supposed to stay at home for months? The government did not offer solutions. The fruit is for all social classes. The poor, the middle class and the rich buy their clothes from these markets.
According to the National Institute of Statistics, the purchasing power of Tunisian consumers fell to its lowest levels in 10 years. A partial lockdown and nightly curfews, especially during the weekends, have deepened the economic and the social crisis.
I cannot afford to buy new clothes for my family because it's very expensive. This old fruit market is the refuge of the population where everyone can buy cheap items. However, the pandemic has caused a sudden hike in prices.
Analysts say the COVID-19 crisis has changed consumer spending in the North African country.
Tunisians have picked up new trends over the past 9 months. They're using old clothes to make face masks. They don't spend much on new and fashionable clothes because of social distancing, remote work, and the ban on public meetings.
Tunisian wholesale and retail merchants agree the fruit sector has been hit hard by the pandemic. The syndicate of fruit vendors estimates 3,000 businesses in the sector have shut their doors since March. The Tunisian Ministry of Trade has revealed that the import of the fruit has become more expensive due to the crisis facing many European and North American exporters. Both the quality and quantity of second-hand items have been affected in recent months. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And finally, a look at the currencies. The Nigerian naira appreciated marginally against the dollar to trade at 3-1 per greenback against Friday's close of 386. This has been attributed to businesses opening up after the relaxation of a curfew initially imposed to stop violence that followed the end-SARS protests. The Nigerian currency was pegged at 460 per dollar in the parallel market. And with that, we come to the end of Global Business tonight. We'd love to hear from you. Send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thank you for watching.